Hello and welcome to the TechGig Virtual Panel discussion. I am your host, Sukriti. Hope everyone is doing well. And thank you everyone for joining us today. So recruiting automation is the way towards improving the recruiting procedure by removing manual tasks that needs to acquire, engage, pre-screen, interview, and hire. The popularity of AI-based application is constantly growing in various sectors. And recruitment is one of the well-known sectors that is demanding for recruitment automation tools. And folks, we are going to discuss automating the recruitment process and how hiring managers can find the right tech talent by adding automation. Our stellar panelists here will discuss and deliberate on how they're automating the recruitment process when it comes to hiring the tech professionals in a time and cost-efficient manner. We will also talk about the process of shortlisting tech talent based on skill scores and how, as recruiters, they plan to eliminate the cost of bad hires. Please join me in welcoming Anjali Byce, CHRO STL, Kalpana Singh, Head of Talent Acquisition, Fidelity Investments area, Rajesh Balasubramanian, Senior Vice President, HR and Head of Global Strategic Resourcing Mphasis, and Anjali, Global Head of Talent Acquisition from Zycus. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation, panelists. I would now request you to please give us your introductions and the opening remarks for the session. So we'll begin with you, Anjali.
Thanks, Sukriti. Thanks for having me here. And hello, everybody who's logged in to this very, very topical subject that we are here to discuss. I'm Anjali Byce, CHRO of STL, Sterlite Tech. We've been running all the while during this lockdown. So while Sukriti, you talk about, this being, a very interesting time, it is. But the telecom and tech space has, which is what I represent. So we are into the space of all the way from fiber cable, all the way through to creating 5G broadband and everything in between, deployments and software. So we've been running all the while through during these times as well, being essential services. So this is an interesting topic. I'm really looking forward to it because automating of the recruitment process is critical from a process perspective, but I think also to retain it being delightful in its own way, but also human. So having high tech, but not forgetting to have high touch. And I think that's why it's so important to talk about this and looking forward to the conversation, Sukriti.
Absolutely, Anjali. Thank you so much for that. Kalpana.
Thanks, Sukriti. Really looking forward for this conversation. As rightly mentioned by Anjali, my co-panelist here, I think it is about that right balance between technology and the human-centric aspect of recruiting, which makes it special. I've been with Fidelity and I'm heading the TA function with Fidelity. Overall, 20 years of experience in the talent market, talent space. So hence really looking forward to learning more in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalpana. Sanju?
Hi, thank you so much, Sukriti, for having me here in this conversation. And I think it will be great to learn more about what we all are trying to do in each of our own organizations, Kalpana and Anjali. From my perspective, I think recruiting is a space where a lot of software organizations have been trying to automate, right? So therefore, today we see many companies working on solving the problems that we do. And the pandemic, in fact, made us realize as recruiting leaders that we got to invest more and more on automating the process. And it will be great to learn and hear from each one of you what you guys are doing in your organization. I am Sanju, and I head the talent acquisition team for Zycus. We are a SaaS cloud software, AI software company. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Sanju. Rajesh?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Very happy to be in such august company. Obviously, talent acquisition is the hot topic of the hour and the industry. And as this war for talent rages on, as we come back from the pandemic, obviously one of the things that is in everybody's mind is how to win this war, and obviously how to win this war with the least amount of effort, and how to ensure that we bring efficiency into the overall process. So I think very, very interesting times, especially when all of us are working remotely and coming back So getting adjusted to the change and then bringing a whole lot of process changes, it's all coming together. In my opinion, it's great times, positive times for the industry as a whole.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. So, and once again, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of insights shared for our audience, as well as a lot of learnings for each other. So let's quickly get on to the questions. Now, before I move ahead, audience, we have a dedicated time for our panelists to answer your questions. So in case if you have any, please feel free to drop them in the chat window, and we'll take them once we are done with our discussion. Okay, now moving on, I would want to go ahead with my first question, that how are you guys looking at automating the entire recruitment process when it comes to hiring the tech professionals, and how are you exactly driving the process in a time and cost efficient manner? I would want to take a round from Rajesh. Rajesh, let's begin with you.
Sorry. I think each one of us obviously have very, very nuanced current state scenarios, if you will. But mostly what I've seen is recruitment processes, especially, tend to be very monolithic and sequential. And I think one of the biggest things when you automate is it's very difficult and very onerous to actually take on a very, very huge process like recruitment, which goes on right from demand creation all the way to onboarding and trying to automate everything together. So I think very, very importantly, componentization is a very, very key need of the hour in terms of recruiting process automation, because it helps you identify which are the processes that you want to automate. Obviously, top 3 priorities for me is to speed up the process, scaling up internal databases, and also reduce the number of touch points will be the 3 top areas that I want to automate in my process itself. Because very, very critically, volume hiring versus specialized niche leadership hiring obviously need differentiated strategies, and you can't automate everything together. I think you need to pick and choose very, very carefully. So recruiting software is definitely the need of the hour, and as this space continues to evolve, I think it's important for us to pick and choose very, very carefully what we want to automate, where we want to automate, what are the outcomes we want to drive.
Andrew, we'll move for you now.
Sorry, is it for me now? Am I the next one?
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Well, I think we've been trying to adopt technology a lot right now, and pandemic actually made us realize that we got to depend on technology more. So we've done a lot of things, like right from maybe even e-signing your offer letter. We used to have that pen paper signatures, and suddenly we were trying to do DocuSign, but we realized that we got to have little more cost-effective measures, and start utilizing e-signatures and accepting e-signatures. So we had to work with even legal to tell them and explain to them that now we can't, right? We have to accept DocuSigns, letters and all. Starting from there to even figuring out how are you going to conduct interviews, right? So while we all started off with maybe Teams and adapting to Teams and stuff, and how would you do coding interviews? So that's how the journey was. Today if you ask me honestly, I felt that doing interviews virtually on Teams, right, made our process more efficient. Whereas, like Kalpana said, well, perhaps we are missing the human connection that you have. Maybe you can walk a candidate and show them the office. But if I do a recruiting drive, right, the possibility of people not showing up for the interview reduced. The problem that I had about making the candidate, travel or, get a gate pass from that SEZ, gate to our office, that wasn't no more there. Making the candidate wait wasn't there anymore. Or even, our panelists not showing up on time wasn't there anymore. People would just hop on. And finding the candidate's time, right, for an interview was really easy. So those are some of the things that really work for us. On the sourcing side, what the biggest problem was to be able to figure out, what would we do with the applications? In my career, we've always had this conversation with recruiters. Why do you jump onto Naukri first when you have hundreds of resumes on your system? how are you going to move that pipeline, right? And they would come and say that it is easier to search on Naukri, right? The resume is always updated. And I think that is one problem which, one of our current ATS is able to solve. Like we use an ATS called Skillate, all right, which is an AI-based ATS, which is able to match profiles, send in, automatic invites, and get the resumes updated. So if I have 1,000 applications in one job, all right, it's telling me that contact this 30, 40, 50 first because they match your JD and the requirement. So these are some of the problems which I think a lot of the softwares are trying to solve, and they add a lot of value to the process that we are trying to run.
You've brought a very valid point for me to, ask the next set of things that I want to. So Sanjay, you mentioned about, the various resumes available. Looking at the market right now, I think every portal is some way or the other trying to fix that up for recruiters. Offering you the job profiles, maybe giving you the right kind of job descriptions that you would want to roll out in the market. Right. Everything is lying, everybody's probably trying to innovate that space for you to, the prefix, I should say, is in place for everyone. Now, when I move to Kalpana and Anjali, I would want to know, so, Rajesh and Sanjay spoke about the challenges and what, sort of recruitment automation they're trying to do. I would want you to throw some light on the efficiency part in terms of course, the time and cost. And also help me understand how much time, specifically, if you ask me, how much time does it take when you transfer your job of sourcing and then onboarding and then finally handing it over to the person, the manager who under whose supervision the person is supposed to work. So what is the kind of play out that comes out there? Kalpana, we'll move to you first.
Yeah, so see, overall, if you look at it, I think I agree with Sanju. If I look back, right, last 2 years, I think the industry got accelerated, right? So had it been no pandemic, I think all of us would have taken probably many more years to digitize and get to a spot where, we would have looked at our processes, kind of really overhauled, and some of it became need of the hour, right? You couldn't physically have those conversations, you couldn't physically sign those documents. You had to kind of really quickly move. I think as an organization, I think Fidelity has been a fairly invested organization when it comes to systems and technologies and automation. So some of these things I think for us was a bit taken care of. So hence I think at least that did give us an added advantage, right? So where you have your ATSs capable of doing pre-skill selection for you, you've got like a fairly robust system which kind of gives you NLPs and others to be able to make some good assessments. And also your earlier investments really gives you the cost saving that you need now. Specifically, you don't make any hasty decisions, right? Things are kind of a little bit better planned, I would say. But there is still lots that can be done in this space. If you ask me, there are still many nuances, right? You still have many multiple systems that you're using. How do you integrate them together? How do you bring everything together? And your resume, your selection process, that in itself can be further taken to the next level, is the way I think about it. I think there's still lots to be done in the space, and there are a lot of new opportunities and a lot of tools and technologies which are now available. I would say they're very customized solutions. For every process in the step, you can find a tool, right? If you want to go and look out, there is no dearth of options and alternatives available. I think I also agree to Rajesh. It is your own context of your own company's strategy and where do you stand and what problem are you solving, and hence what do you want to do, because you can't blindly have like a single brush across in the name of automation as well. So you have to apply your strategy and your context to make it more effective.
Right, Kalpana. So, we were very specifically talking about that segmentation wherein we choose to automate and wherein we would like to keep it manual, right? And I think that's exactly the kind of balance that we as recruiters, try to look into. Anjali, moving on to you, let's talk about the transfer, the shifting of responsibilities that happens across board. How would you talk about that? And do you think, because this transfer, the shift that happens between the verticals, I think is more time consuming than anything else, right? Once you source the candidates, the entire part that comes up in the screening, in the shortlisting, and then finally doing the skills score test and all those things, I think that is more time consuming than anything else, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to stay very sharp on my response to the spirit of your question, which is on efficiency and effectiveness. And if we were to look at the entire value chain that any recruiting process, and of course I'm talking about mass hiring now because that's the spirit of where automation is getting plugged the most. Right from the start to the tail end and integration into other processes, something that STL is completely committed to looking at driving in the most efficient and effective way. So if we start right from the beginning, right from the manager putting in a requisition, that's automated, all the way through to looking at a mass set of resumes. How do we really make that happen? We have an AI-enabled resume stacking tool. So which means that at any point in time, you have mass number of resumes that are chugging in through the pipeline. And this artificial intelligence enabled tool really goes out and stack ranks it in the sharpest way for maximizing sourcing efficiency, going back to your question. If I move forward from there, all the way through to an individual getting offered, going ahead and offer acceptances being done online, offers being done online. Of course, a lot of organizations do that. But then at the other end of the spectrum, we also have the entire background verification process, all the triggers for that. Everything is really automated right now, end to end. And that's how we drive efficiency. But one that I want to spike on in my answer is really where you talked about managers meeting, interviews. Guess what? Apart from all of this, that takes a lot of time as well. And then there are allied processes around it, setting it up, making it happen, coordinating so many people's time. For that, we actually came up with a very creative method where we have partnered for pre-interviewed candidates that get put into an online system. And so guess what? We've already, sieved out what is really relevant to us. And that pool then goes through a very accelerated interview process because they are pre-interviewed for the identified capabilities. So what have we done? We've collapsed the time, which is efficiency, but also enhanced the effectiveness because we've already got multiple sets of eyes or lenses that have looked at the same candidate. So it's really end-to-end, Sukriti, in terms of automation, both for efficiency, but also effectiveness. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anjali. I think that really makes sense. And as we speak, I'm sure a part of strategy is already there in place for all of us. But we keep on evolving and innovating when it comes to our own strategies and execution. Moving on to the next one, I would want to know that the processes all of you are following, how helpful or how efficient that has been in picking up the right talent with the right skill sets or JDs that you roll out for, because there has to be a very, very well-versed understanding between a tech manager's requirement along with the recruiter who's trying to recruit and shortlist the candidate. So that has to be very, very collaborative, and it has to come out in the right manner. What the tech manager is looking at has to be exactly what the recruiter looks out for. So that sourcing and the entire process, how efficient that has been for me. I would want all of you to keep it very quick. I'll go to Kalpana first.
Yeah, so I think sourcing is very critical and important, right? So I think even before sourcing, I think we focus on the job description itself. How is it more inclusive? What kind of language are you using? What kind of, how clear you are in terms of what you really need? Because it's like your, typical requirement gathering process. If that's not correct, if that's not right, you'll end up, kind of really not ending where you wanted to go, right? So hence, I think there's a lot of focus in ensuring, and I think also the other bit, so recruiter plays a very critical role. How much does, and in an organization like ours, which has a lot of domain and insights of what we do and what we kind of bring to the table, I think there's a whole lot of that context that plays out. So I do see a recruiter playing a very critical role in making sure this portion of the process is rightly set for the right outcomes to flow.
Okay, Sanju.
My answer to the question that you had would be, I think current problem that we face is not in sourcing, right? I think as colleagues in this industry, our current problem is in conversion of the candidate. Somebody who's joining me might join Kalpana, right? I'm waiting for the person for 3 months. So that is the, I think, biggest problem that we all are going through at this point of time. Sourcing is not, because I think we're able to attract, right? There are a lot of jobs in the market. People are applying to different jobs. Therefore, the problem to be solved out, how do we screen through those guys, quickly get to the reach, and like I said, create an efficient interview process. We experimented with a few other things. For example, because we have a lot of Gen Z, population, and today we feel that the process of scheduling has to be eliminated. People needs to be able to self-schedule your calendar. We would spend a lot of time in calling the candidate, are you available at 3 o'clock tomorrow, 4 o'clock tomorrow? I think we automated that process, right, by using simple tools to be able to show them the calendar of the interviewer, and why don't you block a time? And I think that is fabulously working at this point of time. So that's one piece. The other piece that we tried doing was recording these interviews, right? Now, often we are able to shorten the interview or save time of our interviewers if you record the interview and just show it to the next interview, whether you want to take the interview or not, right? And therefore, that saves a lot of time for the next interviewer, the final interviewers, who are probably executives and who are much more, who are probably very busy, to be able to spend time on candidate that may not be worth so much, right? And therefore, you make the decision process a little bit faster. Often, like if you find a great candidate, we're able to make that go no go decision immediately as well. So some steps using tools that it's easily available is something that's really helping out. In my process, I think I tend to take inspiration from the sales and marketing departments, right? I think recruiting is not very different from it. Marketing has to generate leads, right? Tools like Lucia marketing would use, and it's a similar tool that we would try to buy, right? The process is not difficult. Marketing would use maybe a way to reach out, outbound marketing concepts, right? To reach out the people on LinkedIn, recruiters would need to do the same thing. I think there is lots that we can actually learn from the sales and marketing teams, and imbibe them in our recruiting process as well. And that's what we've been trying to do with.
So Sanju, that part wherein you spoke of the conversion rate that people are, they're declining offers and they might just join Kalpana's or Rajesh or Anjali's organization. This doesn't come to me as a surprise. The only surprising factor here is that I've been listening to this particular problem for almost 1.5 years now. And to my amaze, it has not been yet solved. So this is I think this is where we are stuck, and we're not able to gauge that human attention to let them focus onto one but like 10 different organizations. So thank you. I think that really persists, and we are all of us are striving to resolve that. Now, I'll move to Rajesh. Rajesh, what's your opinion here?
So very valid. I mean, what Kalpana said, and later the analogy to marketing, right? Only one thing I have is I just wish business forecasts talent requirements as well as they forecast revenue requirement. But I'm sure all of my colleagues here will agree that never happens, and we continue to struggle with just-in-time demand, and that puts additional pressure on everybody. But just piggybacking on whatever I just started with respect to componentization of processes as a precursor to automation and choosing what you want to automate. I mean, the way I look at it, I split my recruitment process into 3 parts. Demand to select, which is essentially your sourcing. So you take the demand and then you go over through the motions, finding candidates, scheduling, and then getting them interviewed and bringing them up to the select stage. And then there is the select to offer, which is essentially an offer making team. And then the third stage is your offer to joiner, which is your candidate engagement team. Right? So I try to componentize my entire recruitment process, and then I have 2 horizontals supporting these 3 verticals, if you will. One is my channel management team, which is vendor partners, now create LinkedIn, job sites, etc., and all of that, social media, communities. Then the last one is technology platforms reporting that aid all of these three pillars, right? So this helps me prioritize what I want to automate, right? And what this also helps me do is to very clearly divide the quantity versus quality and balance that equation, if you will, or the output versus outcome. Because today I'm part of Mphasis. We hire a lot of volume. We also hire specific leadership niche engineering skills as well. So it's not the same strategy. So breaking it down into some of these components helps me also focus and get some razor sharp focus into each component and say, okay, I have a particular output that I want to derive from the sourcing team, a particular output from the recruiting team, or offer making team, a particular output from the candidate team in terms of joining ratios. So that helps me convert, in Sanju's words, at every stage, and I can introduce specific standalone tools even to automate some of those processes rather than stringing it together. What this also helps in terms of teams internally is it very clearly demarcates roles, the goals that each of these roles have, and my ability to actually drive outcomes from it. And because all of these teams are tied with the KRA and the KPIs of specific outcomes, right? For example, it's not I have 1,000 requirements. No, I need to bring in 1,000 people, but what about the quality? What about the right fit? So that outcome is actually tied across these functions. Everybody is responsible for that outcome, but each one of them have their own specific output element in terms of numbers, right? So that's how you bring it together. And therefore, the reason why long story short is it helps me decide, number one, what process to automate, number two, what kind of tools to do, rather than going for a big bang. I'm sure all of my peers here would agree that some of the times we go and buy a tool, but we use only about 30%, 40% of it because we're not ready for the next 70%, right? So it also helps me break down, buy smaller tools, integrate. In today's age, integration is not as bad and difficult as it was a few years ago. So it helps me do that. So that way, the process that helps me decide where to automate, what to automate, how to automate, actually helps me also to generate and drive higher numbers and higher quality. Am I there yet? Not necessarily. It's a work in progress, obviously, and we still continue to go towards there. But absolutely, I think it's a very evolving, fast evolving field. Very excited to be there in the time where we've been forced to do some of these changes. As Kalpana said, if there was no pandemic, we'd probably be sitting and doing manual Excel sheets in terms of data crunching and doing face-to-face interviews, even though we had bought video interviewing tools, right? I mean, change was forced upon us. I think in a way it's been good for the industry, good for the candidates, good for the companies.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Rajesh's last point, where he said somehow it forced us, because, like, I'll tell you my personal experience. We had a video recording software that we had purchased. We were going to do interviews. People would say, fly the person down here, right? And that is going to be very difficult. Now there is no way, right? So slowly we adapted to it, and then we say, wow, it works better.
So Sanju, when we speak of this sudden automation, I think it forcefully happened for almost all the verticals, because the survival was only possible, when once you automate your entire, process and do the right thing for the business. So maybe the requirement which was forced onto us, and see, automation was already happening at its own pace, though. But when the pandemic, just kicked in, it pushed all of us to get into that mode altogether. So Rajesh, thank you so much for those insights. Anjali, what do you think? What would you like to add here?
So maybe I take 2-3 different examples to answer your question at the start of this discussion, which was on sourcing, and how is it that that entire challenge is being dealt with. And I completely agree that a larger challenge is really getting people on board, but this has got its own nuance, because if you get it right at the beginning of the process, it's the outcome is definitely going to be neat. So what we've really been doing is that even at the sourcing stage, so when we had the AI tool that got used for stack ranking and really identifying the top from the source, what we realized is it's not just about efficiency and cutting down cost and time, but also it started eliminating bias in the whole process. And I think that's another very, very important element for strong talent acquisition, where there is equal opportunity for all. And that entire process sharpened our sourcing methodology. Of course, collapsed the time, but then it also brought this to the fray. The second is, what is it at the end of the day? It's matchmaking, right? I mean, when you're trying to source and get, you're trying to get the right talent and match it with the right organization, or its values, ways of working, the challenges, etc. So another example that comes to mind is during these times, we were obviously needing to do virtual career fairs now, because at the end of the day, there was no going out to all the Ivy League colleges, traveling around the globe. We had to sit in one place and do this whole process online. So we had this virtual Ivy League college career fair, where it was interesting because normally we would go as organizations and interview people, see if they fit the requirement, etc. But here it was really about us making a pitch, and then at the same time the candidates coming and making a pitch. So they were evaluating us as an organization as much as we were evaluating them as candidates, and that again sharpened the entire sourcing process, because it was like matchmaking. If it fits, if both are equally interested, they come to the fore. And I think that's a great way of making the sourcing process efficient. I can think of a few more examples, but maybe I'll give you one more, and then we move on with our conversation. But another very, very fun thing that we are in the process of doing is really gamifying our entire referral process. People in our organization, our teams, they know exactly what we want. So bring your friends to work, bring the right talent. Guess what? It completely sharpens sourcing. But more importantly, the last part that we were talking about, which is to say, getting people to come on board. When you get a friend, the likelihood of an offer rejection and it, going out of your funnel or pipeline is almost zero. They're bound to come in and they're bound to stay. So it's a winner all the way around. So we're trying to really gamify that process also. So I can think of these three examples that hopefully the audience finds relevant on how to enhance sourcing, but also get people on board.
Thanks, Anjali. I think that adds on to a lot of elements altogether that all four of you have shared with me today. Now, I would want to know something very different. So we spoke of shortlisting. We spoke of how time-consuming that can be. What are the challenges that we as recruiters you are facing? Help me understand. Given a choice, if you would have a process where you can actually screen the candidates through their skill scores, which is completely automated. How about that? How does the idea exactly sound to you? I'll go to Rajesh first.
All right, it's something that's very dear to my heart. Ideally, I want to go to a resume-less application, right? In the future, I shouldn't have to actually send my resume to actually apply for a job. My digital footprint should speak for myself, right? Today, we're in such a connected world. We're all on social media. We're in God knows where our profiles floating, where our phone numbers are. Everybody knows more about us than ourselves, right? Today, imagine a situation where you don't even have to apply, send a resume, right? Say, just go to a site and say, I want to apply to this. And a recruiter at the touch of a button should have all the information about me. I mean, imagine that's like utopia, right? I mean, for anybody, you don't have to really look at resumes. You don't have to parse anything. All the data points that you need will be there. That's going to be very, very, like I said, utopian, very ideal. I would love to get there, but then at some level, I think we all have started looking at it. For example, I was filling out an application for the US visa, and now one of the questions was give us your social media handle. Right? I mean, they're collecting information, right? I mean, and there it is. And they by the time you go for your interview, they know what you are, what comments you've made, where you have liked, and they've done a social profile on you, right? I mean, so today with GitHub, with Stack Overflow, you can go and submit your code. You can go evaluate yourself with HackerRank. You can go certify yourself. There you are. I mean, you've already proven yourself. And what is the need for an interview, right? So. So as much as I'd like for applications to become resume free, I'd like evaluations to be hands free as well, right? I mean, so what's the need to evaluate? So today, probably at some level, companies may still want to do quote unquote HR interview, right? So, hey, how are you going to speak? You still have to converse with customers. If you're in a customer facing situation, you still have to communicate to your teams. So how do you do that? But then the overall requirements for individual contributors is increasing significantly. Maybe we can start there. Maybe we can see if we can do some of these type of hiring and recruitment process changes from that perspective. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think skill scores, evaluations that we do interviews, I mean, they have great utilitarian value. I'm not denying that. But then I think their value is diminishing as we go by, especially when we want to hire in volume. And today, if you look at it, there is obviously a set of requirements where you really need to write very, very significant amount of code that helps create applications individually. But then predominantly the kind of requirements that come as well, nobody really knows if the JD, it's like a Chinese whisper, right? I mean, somebody says, then it goes down, it's a water cooler conversation, then the requirement goes down to the account manager talks to his or her delivery manager offshore, delivery manager talks to their lead, and finally what the customer said and what gets written in the job description is very, very different. And then we all crib about, hey, we're failing customer interviews, we're not really clearing interviews, because I mean, the customer said A, and then what get translated was something else altogether, and nobody does that check. So I think it's going beyond job descriptions. I mean, but it'll evolve. It's not, maybe we're not there yet, but it will definitely evolve, and I would like to see it go there. Today, if you look at it, evaluation also is based on customer needs, right? I mean, customer, like I said, customer says something else gets translated. So therefore, you still have the legacy way of evaluating, whether it's internal, okay, I'll do a screening, then I'll do a couple of interviews internally, and then put you on to the customer. Customer asks for a written test, and then does a couple more interviews, and then you get in. We're still there. I mean, it's not going to go away anytime soon. But then it is changing. I definitely see a very skill-based evaluation coming up. Okay, you have a 8 out of 10 in this HackerRank certification. Okay, so I'll cut down one level of interview for you. So we're at least talking about that, right? So that's very heartening. But then again, it should, like I've always said, it should evolve into the volume hiring should have a high touch, low tool, a low touch, high tool evaluation. Essentially, nobody should really need to talk to a developer. All I need to know is, okay, are you good in coding? Get you in. But as you go senior, as you go niche, it should be more high touch and low tool kind of a touch process in terms of evaluation. I think that's broadly, if we agree on that principle, some of whatever I told in terms of resume-less applications, absolutely hands-free evaluations, all that can be complementary to the overall process. I think that's, in my opinion, where this world is evolving in terms of evaluation, shortlisting, etc.
So Rajesh, I'm going to simplify that for you, and I'm going to tell you that that's something that we at TechGig are already doing. We have a developer community. We have a huge developer community already, and we also conduct hackathons and coding competitions. Several brands have engaged with us already for doing this. Now we have this profile wherein it is actually automated, and it's completely based on the performance of a particular person, that the person has maybe taken up so many hackathons, have participated in so many coding competitions, and there's nothing manual in there, right? The entire school and skill competency that you would see on that profile is exclusive, and it is a reflection of what the person really knows, right? Apart from what the person wants to show on the resume, this is something that will actually reflect what the person really knows and how competent the person is. So I think that makes the job of a person who is looking for a particular profile much more easier. And when it comes to bulk also, since it's a developer community that we have, I think we have already so many people, made their profile here, and we're already helping organizations do that and cut down their entire screen time, because when they ask for a certain profile, let's just say maybe a Java developer profile, if they ask for 100, we'll give them 200. They can still shortlist 100 out of the 200, and they can just carry forward with the maybe one round of introduction of interview, and then just finalize if the person is really good for the right fit as per their requirement. So we were already moving there, right? As you also mentioned that we're already there. Those kind of certification that we're doing, it's already there. Anjali, what would you want to add here?
So I don't really want to take a binary view to say that maybe skill is not so important and something else is, or that resume competence is probably more important than, say, a capability. I wouldn't really take a binary view, because I think all of them collectively bring the whole self of the candidates to the table. But I would definitely say that what we're really looking for is definitely past performance, but also future potential when we are picking up somebody, because we're not really hiring for here and now. And so therefore, if I was to really go out and say, what would it be that would be really valuable? Definitely looking at skill and capability, because that's something that talks about here and now. But guess what? It also talks about future, but it also talks about the ability to pick adjacent skills in the future. So from that perspective, I think it would make a good choice to pick skilling as an area, or if you had a skill inventory and everybody stacked in that, it would be really quick and sharp for more reasons than one. Because at the end of the day, it's a business need. I mean, we're talking about it from a very process perspective for some reason in our conversation today, but the start point is really a business need. And when you have a strategy, you have a business need, and then you're really aligning the talent acquisition to fulfill that business need. And from that perspective, it's not here and now. It's now, mid, and long term, which is nothing but present capability, past performance, and future potential. So I think all of that comes together in a very good way with a skill inventory. Also, as an organization, many of us, and certainly for STL, while we've been largely a role-based organization, which is a transformation we did about 3.5 years ago, at this juncture, we're seeing role plus skill. For yet another reason, and that is that once you get people on board, we can't be blindsided to the fact that once they come in, you need to create these dual career paths or specialist career paths. And guess what is the foundation, or at the heart of the entire dual career structure, is again the skill architecture. So I think for more reasons than one, it would be indeed very valuable to be able to get profiles that are already stack ranked, or displaying skill capability at whatever level of competence or gradient of capability there is. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anjali. Kalpana, what would you want to add here?
Yeah, no, I agree to what Anjali is saying here, right? So I think somewhere there is always so different profiles that you need would have different requirements that you need to bring to the table, right? It's like five fingers, right? So everything is different, and they all come together to deliver the end outcome and making clients successful and the organization as well. So hence, and also the time has been changing so much that agility has to be baked in, right? So you should be not just looking at the future element of it. How can you build on it? How can you? So all of those potential portions of the equation has to be in the entire scheme of things, right? So and also I feel there is so much out there that to have that sanity of what really you need as part of your own organization, you would need some kind of a mechanics to be able to screen, shortlist, and bring through the process and then get to the end conclusion that you're wanting to draw. Otherwise, I think the universe is quite wide, right? So I feel there has to be some of those processes which kind of become those eliminators to kind of get to the right talent that you're going after. So I do see a lot of value in that.
It's like paving a shortcut out of the entire process, isn't it? Sanju, I would move to you now. Please tell me, what do you think about this?
So, in my opinion, that is the future. The future is going to be where it's going to be a lot driven by automation because people are thinking through it, right? But it is more like less like driverless cars, right? There was a vision, right? You see it happening right now. Many years back, probably you would not have thought that something like Tesla would come up, right? And it could be driven without without even you holding the steering. And like I tried walking this path last year, and I think there was a little bit of acceptance, not a lot of acceptance, right? So for example, like Rajesh was saying, we customer support roles, we thought what could happen? We want to check communication skill, so let's get a English test, right, which will check on English communication skills done. So we went out, got one of the best test course called Versant, right, tried it out, and even after that, right, we're going to realize that no, there were people who would get rejected, right? So using a lot of this test, but I really saw the value that, yeah, if the test wasn't there, my team would have had to speak to 1,000 people, right? We processed 10,000 people, right? That was the volume that we were able to process by tweaking this change. Of course, we thought that we may be able to offer candidates without interviews, right? But that is something that we could not do. People wanted to interview, right? Hiring managers wanted to ensure that they meet, right? And we tried a lot, saying that, okay, let's get one level of interview done. Why don't you just listen to the interview and then decide? I got some people in, and then it backfired on me, right? Saying that we had to let these guys out. So I think, however, look, the process still looks very interesting. I think that is going to the future because we don't have a capability to assess so many people unless there is an automated process, right? And it will be there slowly and slowly. People will start adopting to it. Look, let's take electric cars, right? Today we see it on the road, right? But it was just an idea, and we see it here in India. Perhaps in Netherlands or in the US, there were charging stations. But today you see charging stations in India as well. So I think a few years down the line, it is going to get automated. The technology will become mature. Let's talk about the screening technology that we are talking about. We're also excited. All the software, HR software organizations, like ERP is gone, right? Now we don't say success factor is so good. There was a time when we would like process and say adopt success factor, spend a lot of money. Today, SaaS companies are coming in. A lot of SaaS companies, they're doing really great stuff. But then what I realized in this same simple example, everybody comes and say, I would do EI, right? I will match the profile. Most of the use cases, they would try to match a Java developer. But tell them to match a sales manager or a marketing manager. They would not have trained that role. So it's still evolving. And when the technology matures, I think that is when the adoption will also happen.
So Sanju, when you're talking of tech profiles, of course, it's just the tech profile that we are trying to actually recruit and evaluate and then build up the skill scores, because that is in exactly where you can actually have a skill score based on evaluation. When it comes to sales or marketing professionals, you will have to have more qualitative evaluation than quantitative evaluation. So that's something very subjective. Rajesh, you were saying something.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Sanjay was saying, right? Today, with whatever automation you have, see, there is a difference between profile quality and candidate quality, right? I think we need to be very clear. See, today, profile quality, you can definitely ascertain using parsing tools, you can do matching. So you can go to a resume writing organization, get the best of the resumes out there, and then you're there. You're going to figure on the top of every single parsing engine out there, right? So profile quality, you're done and dusted. I think where skill scores and the stack ranking that Anjali was talking about, and what Kalpana also was corroborating, right? Where that is going to come is to probably help assess candidate quality, right? And it's going to definitely cut down that time and number of levels of interview, like Sanju was saying. yeah, I mean, I think at some point of time we all have experimented with a no interview selection process, but the world is not ready for that yet, in my opinion, right? So I think as long as we make the differentiation between profile quality and candidate quality, and we are very clear that just because a profile looks fantastic, it parses very well, it's 100 out of 100 in terms of the matching score that you get, not necessarily that profile will actually clear an evaluation in person. So I think the skill scores and what you're talking about, the shortlisting methodologies that the rest of them talked about, I think they're all definitely will reduce the overall turnaround time with respect to evaluation and help in better selection, definitely, no doubt about that. So I just wanted to add that.
So Rajesh, there's always a but to everything that we talk of when it comes to innovation, and we're talking about the advancements. And as we speak, we all know that no matter how much automation is actually incorporated across verticals, across functionalities, nothing can move without the human intervention. And that's exactly when the decision making comes in. That even if we are giving you 50 best profiles, you will still have to interview them and see if they're matching your business requirements or not. So that human intervention, as we speak, will always, it has been important, and will always be important, no matter how automated we term ourselves to be. So very, very important point. Thank you so much for that. I will now move to the last one that I have actually put in to ask for all of you. That we've spoken of shortlisting, screening, and everything. I want to talk about the bad hires. I would want to know from each one of you that what is the cost, how expensive a bad hire is for your company, or generally, if you can help me understand. And I'm sure all of us have strategies in place, but how have you made that strategy to eliminate this aspect from your entire hiring process, that as a caution, you're taking of avoiding the bad hire cost that actually turns down the business? So I'll start with Kalpana this time.
So that's an interesting one, right? Cost of bad hire. So overall, I think first of all, I would want all of us to get comfortable with the fact that there would be some of those people. Like, you can never get to a spot where whatever you bring through the door is like this absolute match, right? Because there are a lot of things, right? The candidate itself has a lot of expectations of the organization and what the role is and what really is being offered, as much as there is from a organization standpoint, right? So I feel also by the time you realize that it's a bad hire, right? So that it doesn't happens instantaneously, right? So the person got hired, the person is in the system. Then how is your ecosystem? What kind of things do you have for this person to get settled down? What kind of stuff do you have? And then what capabilities and skills and potential and all the good stuff that we were talking about. So net, I think it's a very nuanced topic in itself to say, okay, there's a bad hire, and hiring, what could you do differently in your hiring process to eliminate that in itself? So for all practical purposes, I think like any other organization, right, you do look back your channels, your sources, where did the person came from. You can do all sorts of root cause analysis and things to gather some data insights. But I think that's part of the business. So if you ask me personally, I don't kind of really make that such a big deal to say, let's do all this analysis paralysis to kind of really figure this one out. I would rather make it part of the system that we need to be comfortable with the fact that there is so much of human intervention that we will have all sorts of things happening. And so if you ask me personally, that's my point of view.
Thanks, Kalpana. Anjali.
So I don't think there's a bad hire. Sometimes mismatched. That somehow tends to label it on the individual, and that would be inappropriate because the person's a fit somewhere. And I think there's a mismatch or an error. In my view, it's very easy to join the dots always when you look over your shoulders. It's very easy to join the dots. But at that point in time, you're taking the best decision in the context with the given information you have. So my view is that to mitigate this risk, what we need to do is make sure that those assumptions don't go out of sync. And those are exactly, someone earlier in our commentary today was talking about, that's where innovation starts, I think it was you, Sukriti. So when we come across something that we say, but this is not possible, that means there can never be an error-free. I think that's exactly where innovation will start. And so therefore, I think those are really the moments of truth that we have to look and tap into. Some of the things that we are doing to mitigate it, and with the caveat to say, does it mean that we never have a mismatched hire coming in? The short answer is no. Yes, of course we do. But how are we mitigating it? We've actually looked at soon after we do an initial screening and the whole process is done, we do have a bot that does initial checks, helps mitigate some risk. It's totally unbiased method of doing it. Subsequently, we have an automation where the trigger goes out for the background verification. That gives us yet another flavor. The interview process has given us some method, of hoping that there is biases that have not come into the fray. And then towards the end of the process, we're really looking at the engagement being high. We haven't talked too much about the touch part today. We talked a lot about the high tech, but not about the high touch. But soon after, we also have a phase where there is a go, no go risk. And there you could have a mismatch happen again. And so really looking at that engagement in that part of the funnel being spiked up enough so that we are able to catch some of these that could potentially land up becoming a mismatch. And there it is really a high focus on managers interacting, no longer it remaining an HR process, because it isn't. It's at the end of the day for a business need. And the moment there is a commitment to a manager who you're going to come in and work with, the likelihood of catching an error in judgment is high. Also, the likelihood of pulling out is very low, because then you're really making a commitment now if you're going to have these interactions. So that's what I would. Those are my thoughts for avoiding mismatches.
Thanks, Anjali. Sanju, what would you want to add here?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with Anjali. Even I'm a very strong believer of the fact that there isn't a bad hire. Everybody has a place, right? That is, and we interview people from organizations where they're really doing great. This is the reason why we make an offer to them. Perhaps it's just a mismatch where there is probably, how do you get those bad hires? One is, first, maybe there is a skill mismatch. In that case, probably we didn't do a very good job in evaluating those skills, right? Second, probably is there is a cultural mismatch, right? For example, I had a very senior person who felt that ours is like a very startup culture, right? And at the end of the day, you realize that maybe I'm not cut out for this startup because it is very intense, right? One person has to do many things, put on many hats, intense, and sometimes people are not able to really work well. So those are the things that probably, when we look back and say, where would we have been able to identify this and predicted that there is going to be a mismatch? I felt that there was no way we could have done it, because we interviewed, we did all the checks, we did references, and we spoke to the person, whether the person worked with 2-3 managers of theirs, and everybody had a very good thumbs up, right? And during the interview process, everybody puts their best foot forward, right? They're also trying to figure out whether they can. So I think, like Kalpana said, there is going to be, there are going to be instances where we will step into it. The only thing that I think we've got to do is ensure that those instances are minimal and less. At this point of time, we try, for example, I think, while there are assessments that is going on technology and skills, and that you bring on the table, to see that the person is culturally fit, we do a psychometric assessment called Thomas DISC. That really helped us, because we've identified what kind of personality really works for the organization. Those are some of the things that help us in mitigating the risk a little bit. References checks, we ensure that we talk to the manager, at least 2-3 managers, right? And in the beginning, when you do a reference check for a junior engineer, you'd always feel that everybody talks good about it. Slowly, I have started to realize and accept that people really, if if there is a bad person, you really get honest feedback from managers as well. We have had cases where we got such honest feedback and we were able to contain the risk. So I think risk mitigation is key, and accepting, like Kalpana said, that there is going to be one or two people who will come in and we will have to deal with it.
Rajesh?
Yeah,
What
so
would you like to add here?
not, but very, very valid topic to speak about. But then I think between Kalpana, Anjali, and Sanju, I think they've covered most of whatever I also wanted to add. But I'd like to look at it, and obviously I agree that acceptance is first, acknowledging that this problem is not going to get eliminated, like Kalpana was saying. Yeah, I mean, we will have to go back and look at why it happened and try to assess how we can stop it. And what Anjali was talking about in terms of using some tools over an extended period of time, even during evaluation and also post onboarding, how do you actually get that and mitigate that? And then finally, what Sanju said, in terms of doing assessments post facto as well, it helps. And because I completely agree, there's no bad hire, there's only misfits and mismatching. And probably the more we look at it that way, the more interventions that can happen as well. But then I'd like to articulate this cost that you were talking about in terms of more in terms of time lost and opportunity lost rather than in dollars or rupees. Because what I've seen is, even if I have to draw a very broad measurement, output and ROI of a hire drop at 30% for a mismatched hire of what a good hire would actually deliver at its peak capacity, right? So if somebody can achieve productivity in 100 days, for a mismatched hire, you would see that productivity completely drop to zero in 30 days, right? That's what I've seen broadly in terms of studies. I think usage of automation to avoid obviously manual errors from happening, recruiting software, evaluation software, obviously that includes analytics seamlessly within it. These all pop specific red flags, right? And finally, your candidate delight team that talks to the candidate, forms that bond and relationship even before they join. I think it's not just an objective exercise, it's a very qualitative exercise. If that can happen, a lot of this can raise these red flags even before somebody joins. And because we've anyway made that commitment for that person to join or that candidate to join, what can be done at least is mitigative steps, intervention in terms of the corporate, in terms of, okay, how do we make the best of the situation? How do we make the candidate successful once he or she comes into the organization? Some of those can be preordained measures that can be taken. I mean, you can templatize most of these, in my opinion, at least broadly, so that people can pick up. Because if they have gone through multiple evaluations and processes in terms of recruitment, it's not going to be 100% mismatch, right? I mean, you're not going to end up with that. So there are still opportunities and choices for mismatched candidates to be actually made productive very soon. I think the nuance is in identification and acting very quickly with respect to mitigating that risk. More than anything, I think the values of the organization, the vision of the organization in terms of what they want to achieve, as long as some of those areas are broadly aligned and you don't have somebody that is going to challenge the values of your organization or the value system of your organization, I think you're safe for the most part. That's what I would think.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. So, normally also when we're trying to innovate and we're trying to actually improvise certain things, there are a lot of things that we learn in that course. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to explore, and that is a part of learning for all of us. In fact, data also reveals that only 20% of companies as of now are leveraging the entire recruitment automation to support their diversity initiatives and optimizing the entire candidate discovery and qualification. Whereas 61% of talent acquisition professionals believe that their recruitment automation can help reduce the unconscious biasness also. So I think biasness and the challenges that we've just spoken about comprehensively makes it up for us to keep on working and innovating and look for solutions that are in the market and people are offering to us. So clearly, we are moving towards simplifying on automating the recruitment process along with the manual efforts in terms of decision making. Thank you so much, Anjali, Kalpana, Rajesh, and Sanju for this amazing conversation. I would want a closing remark from each one of you. So let's begin with you, Sanju.
Thanks, Sukriti. Thanks for having me here. I think it was wonderful, learning from all of you what you guys have been doing in your organization. This topic is very, very dear to me because even in like you said, a lot of us think that there's a lot in the recruiting process that can be automated. So I think the future is definitely going to be automation. I think all of us recruiting leaders, what are trying to do is, while we do automation, like we don't get the human element out, right? I think that's a fine balance that we're all trying to create, and I think that's how we're going to see a better recruiting world evolving.
Thank you so much, Sanju. Rajesh?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, Sukriti. Really appreciate it. And Kalpana, Anjali, Sanju, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be speaking along with you. Really appreciate all of your views, very, very valid, and a lot of learning. I take a lot of learning from today with respect to what I would want to go, because I fairly new to Mphasis, a couple of weeks, so I'm still navigating my way into the organization. But it's great to hear definitely some industry leaders speak from all of you. Thank you. And like Sanju said, let's not lose the human element from the process, right? I mean, whatever you automate, whatever you do. I was recently talking to somebody about automating a particular process of approvals. And while we do that, it doesn't matter who approves, but as long as the principles and the guidelines and the overall spirit of the process is held sacrosanct, anybody can do it, and whether it's a machine, whether it's a human, doesn't matter. But I think it's very important point that Sanju made. It's not. I would definitely not want to lose the human element of the recruitment process, because it still is a very humane process. We're creating careers here. And we're definitely making, and we could break as well multiple dreams and careers of people. So I think it's very, very critical not to let just a machine do it or a process do it. I think the human element is important, but at the same time, definitely have to look at efficiency, have to look at how that efficiency helps the candidate, helps the organization as well at the same time, right? So it's a fine balance, and I think what I saw 10 years ago vis-a-vis what I see now, obviously it's not just a 10-year gap, it's more like a 100-year gap. I think we are evolving exponentially. I think we will continue to do that. So thank you for the opportunity again.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. Kalpana?
Yeah, so similar views. I think I am very happy and blessed to have this panel conversation here. I think it was a great opportunity. Really got to hear a lot of good insights, good learnings. I think a lot of us have experimented a lot of things, and also I think some of them really went well, and I'm sure there were some where we did had our share of failures there. But overall, I think I totally resonate with what Rajesh and Sanju have been talking about here, which is the human element still remains, but automation has its space in the recruiting already, and it has already kind of accelerated in many areas, and I expect it to accelerate much more deeper as we kind of progress. But I think it is imperative to not lose the human element part of it. But overall, absolutely, your scale, efficiency, cost, like all your other metrics will kind of really go to a very different level with automation. And I think that opportunity exists for all of us. And our context matters in terms of which organization, what journeys the teams are making, where do we stand, what our clients are looking at. So I think a lot of that element and the kind of candidate experience that we can create, I think all of those will be determining the way forward. So thank you so much. I think great opportunity and great learning for me.
Thanks, Kalpana. Anjali?
So thanks, Sukriti, for having me here, and I landed up making new friends today through this panel, and I cherish that. Of course, had lots of learnings, good thoughts that got triggered as a consequence of the conversation, and also to the entire audience who's sitting in, listening into this chat show, and I really appreciate that. My reflection is that this is definitely a very topical subject, critical as well, looking at automating just for efficiency and effectiveness. But I just want to add another E there of experience. I think that's something that is very critical as well. And I would say from every touch point, there are so many moments of truth. There's a moment of truth for the manager when the manager is getting engaged in the whole process. There's a moment of truth for the recruiting team. There's a moment of truth at multiple points with the candidate. And at each of those moments, if we are able to make sure that the experience is really best in class, I think that's going to really make a very, very robust and high touch or high feel kind of experience that is really going to entangle the individual with the organization for time to come. So efficiency, effectiveness, but definitely also spiking on experience is what I'd want to leave as a thought for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anjali. So this is just one line that I would want to conclude the interesting conversation that we just had, that automation is here to ease our jobs, but not our responsibilities. Nobody can ease our responsibilities. We'll have to take it up and do it in the right manner. So thank you so much. It's a wrap from our end. Hope, audience, you had a great time learning, and thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned to TechGig for more such conversations. I'm going to come back with a lot more conversations in the coming time. And we'll have some more interesting people joining us. So thank you so much once again. This is your host signing off. Thank you so much once again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for
Thank
now.
you, everyone. Have a lovely day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.